and he is coming in here with me right now as soon as I find him. Enrique, are you there? Oh my gosh, I can hear you, but I can't see. I can hear you, but I can't see you. Hold on one second. There you are.
Hello, everybody.
There you are. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, so excited to have you here with me as well. So nice to meet you. Um,
Likewise.
I watched.
If you hear a baby, I'm on daddy duty, so
Oh, how
that's
old?
why. He's about 2 months old.
Oh, how exciting!
Yeah.
Yay!
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you.
How many is this? Is this your first baby?
Number two.
Number two. How
Yeah.
wonderful. That's great. So, Enrique, I was reading about you yesterday. I was looking at your video that you had sent me on the Corazon Project. You work with a lot of youth, something that's near and dear to my heart. So when you reached out to me and we started messaging a little, I was really excited to learn more about what you do and what you've done. Tell us a little bit about your background and what it is, how you got into this.
Sure thing. So I think I was one of those at-risk young people, growing up, and I didn't have any mentors. I wasn't involved in any sports. I wasn't really exposed to those extracurricular activities. And so I was definitely lost, right? I was lost up until even my young adulthood. And I think even with that, I think it developed into some, once people read my books, they'll understand a little bit more. But, I developed some PTSD, some generalized anxiety disorder, right? So a little bit of everything. And one of the part of PTSD is called a foreshortened future. So I didn't believe I was going to live long. So I kind of wanted to, contribute something positive to this earth, while I was
Mhm.
here. And I was a bit of a mute, right? I didn't speak much because my self esteem was so low. I felt I had nothing good to say, so I just became. And my street nickname was Silent, so I just became quiet. And English teachers kind of one, I dreaded them, right? Because every time I wrote, it was a bunch of red marks. So my spelling and grammar that I was horrible in, and so I felt like I couldn't speak, I couldn't write, So I did some art, um, but there wasn't really an audience or somebody to kind of motivate me with or help me create healing through art.
Mhm.
It was just my own. So with that foreshortened future, believing I wasn't going to live too much longer, I felt like I needed to write. And one English teacher finally set me free. He said, forget about spelling, forget about grammar, just write. And a 5-page paper became 11, became 12. It's just, I felt like there's no judgment. I can just write as much as I needed to write and express. And from there, I felt like, what, let me write. And then in college, a lot of self-reflection papers. I started kind of self-reflecting on my life, and that created my first book, which is Cholo University. So I wrote when I was 18 years old, and it probably took about 3 years to finally finalize. But that was that was at 18 years old,
Mhm.
and it was definitely, when people read it, it's very raw. It's kind of, how to not take off, how to even clean it up a little bit because it was pretty raw in terms of cuss words, etc. So as I kind of became my own first client in terms of self improvement,
Mhm.
um, studying why were all my friends in jail, why were all my friends in
Mhm.
prison, and I was the only one, out. Why this, why that? I discovered sociology, so I just questioning, and eventually I kind of became this kind of self-taught expert on young people because I was becoming an expert on myself and my
Mhm.
friends, etc. And little by little, once I graduated from college, it was like, literally the headlines, right? I was in the media a lot because it was like nobody from my schools, from my area, from my zip code ever graduated from a prestigious university. So it was like, whoa, unicorn, you know?
Right.
And so I got some press on that, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, can you come speak to my class? Can you motivate them? You know, so sure, sure, sure. So I said a bunch of, on this kind of camp, I went on tour basically, right, locally on doing inspirational talks about pursuing college, etc. And little by little, as I started mentoring young people, because young people were like, I want to be like you, I want to go to college. I kind of developed my own kind of mentoring intervention style. And in my early 20s, I started being sought out after schools kind of would say, we don't know what else to do with these young people. The
Mm-hmm.
probation officers didn't know what to do. The therapists didn't know what to do. Parents didn't know what to do. So they started calling on me as the last hope. So they would send me in, and I would work some magic with the young people and start building a reputation as a youth intervention specialist. Just almost like Caesar Milan, right? Where he just kind of self-taught himself out on the streets, talking to
Right.
dogs, you know. So I'll pause myself there because that was a long-winded answer.
No, but I'm interested and I'm intrigued by that because a lot of times I get a lot of people saying, well, there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing, they're a product of their environment. I don't believe that at all. And so, what do you find is the biggest tool or
Sure.
key that allows you to go and connect with these young people who may be in gangs or who may have
Right.
um, be in it or trying to get out of it, that
Right.
helps you to pull them
Right.
from, I guess, from the dark side, so to speak.
Definitely. Yeah, Father Greg Boyle. He works at in South. Well, he works in Southern California in LA. He started the Humble Industries. He's one of my mentors, and he described it as gangs and teen drug use, etc. It's a form of suicide. It's a form of self destruction,
Mm-hmm.
and I found that to be true. I found that when young people aren't in love with their future, don't see a future, right now doesn't matter. It's all pleasure seeking. So I remember talking to a young girl one time. She was in 10th grade, right? 10th grade is probably about 16 years old. And I asked her, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, it doesn't matter. And I said, why? She's already messed up. I'm like, why do you say that? She's like, because I got all F's last year. So in her head, she thought because she messed up one school year
Mm-hmm.
that she ruined her future and there
Mm-hmm.
was no point in it. So that's what I mean by this kind of erroneous belief systems. And when you hang out with peers, the kind of group mentality, kind of the IQ drops in a group, and they kind of feed themselves these falsehoods
Mm-hmm.
about the future. So my strategy is one, like in Cholo University, there's a checklist, and I call them motivators. And every young person is not aware of what motivates them to do
Mm-hmm.
drugs or gangs, etc. But once they start identifying, like, wow, like, yeah, I seek it because I don't want to be alone. I'm lonely, so
Mm-hmm.
negative friends is better than no friends. Or, I love the adrenaline rush. I'm kind of addicted to the adrenaline rush. So they started self-identifying, and then you find things in life that replaces those things. How do I get that adrenaline rush through sports or through, I don't know, bungee jumping or something? Some type of extreme sports.
Right.
How do I get new friends so I don't feel lonely?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is these books are my tools. So I use these books for my own strategy of intervention. I hand kids the book, and teachers are using them now in juvenile halls, colleges, because it just hooks them in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's teachers send me videos of these young people saying, this is the first book I ever read, cover to cover, or so I use that as a conversation starter. Even if they disagree with something in the book, I say, okay, tell me why. Why do you disagree? So mentoring programs, teachers, English teachers, history teachers. I mean, just different types of educators and counselors are using it because it really, because I'm so vulnerable in the book and so raw that they're like, wow, like, I feel like that way too, but nobody has ever put in writing.
Right. Absolutely. I think that that's really important. I think also in order to get the young people to believe in what it is that you're saying, that it's not just a bunch of, somebody else, quoting the same stuff again. I think you coming from that background as well, and then, you know, just putting it out there like it is, I think that's also very, very helpful for young people. I was actually just having this conversation this morning with someone else, and I went through this whole thing about finding your one word, and my one word was belong, and
Mm,
and I think that a lot of these young people also can, when they go into gangs or when they go into these negative habits and stuff, they're also just looking for a place where they can belong, where they can
right.
have make like maybe a family or a brother,
Exactly.
relationships with people. But then it, like you said, it becomes in a negative way, and then you end up doing things that aren't necessarily, that get you, that have severe consequences in the end. And also another thing I like that you said was, all of a sudden they think that they did one thing wrong, like you said with that one girl, she failed her 10th grade year or whatever, and she felt like, okay, that's it, that's the end of it. How important, I know by statistically what they say about mentoring for young people and how important that is. Um, However, I think that there's a lot of schools now that don't do mentoring programs. How
Right.
important, how much emphasis do you put on mentoring as far as helping these young people actually survive their teens to
Right.
move on in life?
And here's the thing that I think sometimes we're too polite to a fault, right? We often are like, we don't want to impose our advice on a young person. We don't want to impose our values, or, we need a structured mentoring program to mentor
Mhm,
kids. The truth is, they're already being mentored. They're being
mhm,
mentored by their street friends, by social media, by older dudes in the neighborhood. They're already being mentored, and they're already imposing their advice and belief systems on them. So, by the time we get around to, building a mentoring program, or, finding, the justification to impose an advice, we're way behind. We're miles behind. You know, I used to be a recruiter for a private school, and I went to go recruit kids from my old neighborhood. And Monday through Friday, it was like the law of sociology, like tug of war of the mind. Monday through Friday, we had them plugged into school and productivity. On the weekends, we would lose them, because we have to start all over on Monday. Because on the weekends, they would go back to the neighborhood, go to parties or whatever, even their own families, right? Kind of this kind of forget school, let's go to visit, 10 family members and party or whatever. And on Monday, they're like, nope, no homework. And what's the point? And I don't want to be here. And then we start again, So it's definitely a tug of war. That's why I think the books are important, because the mentoring is via the books. And
mhm,
I used to tell moms, just throw the book in the room. The curiosity will get to them. Trust me, the curiosity will get to them, and they'll just start opening it up. And that's how I started. When I first wrote my books, I started the appropriate way, right? The proper channels. I started with superintendent, weren't interested. I started with the principals, weren't interested. The department chair wasn't interested. Teachers wasn't interested. So I used to walk onto campus as I was doing my other job duties, and I used to just hand the book to young people and walk away.
mhm.
And these kids are like, "What? Like, who is this dude? Just hand me a book." And of course, people are like, "What is that?" And as they start opening it up and reading it, it would hook them. And teachers would say, "What are you reading? You never read." And
Right,
these teachers would be kind of mind blown of these kids are reading something. So then they started contacting me, in reverse. The teachers started contacting me and say, "I need a class set because this is the only book they're reading." Even a math teacher said one time, "I use it as a carrot. You do math homework or schoolwork, then we
yeah,
get to read at the end of class."
nice,
So it's just, again, I started from kind of the bottom up, in terms of the young
right.
people, and the young people give it credibility.
I love that because, I this past at the end of October, I just published my first book ever. And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. And it's with teens in mind. And it's called Follows and Likes. Is This All I'm Worth?
Mm,
In helping young people understand what true success is,
right,
as opposed to what they see in social media.
right.
And so there's a lesson, each chapter is a lesson, and then there's a real life story of somebody who came from adversity or difficult beginnings or whatever it might be, and then who has created the success that they wanted in their life today. And I did that whole, I've been doing that whole, starting with the whole sending it to superintendents and
Mm-hmm.
school districts and trying to put your foot in the door. But I love that idea of, just bringing it to the kids and handing it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love that's a very
Yeah, and it's kind of it's like the old kind of rappers, right, or music artists who
Mhm.
wouldn't get any any play on the radio, so they would just hand out their music to the cars with the biggest sound system,
Yeah.
and then as they're bound bumping their music all around town, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that's a cool beat, who is that?
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden the radios pick it up, so it's different strategies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even in the, I was just spent the last 8 years in the Dominican Republic. I had a school there. And so when, it's one of those things that they would, the musicians would bring their music to the corner stores and they would play it there. And that's how they would get recognized,
Hmm.
and a lot of times too. So, but yeah, it's really interesting in the idea and in the concept of trying to of not even trying but working towards helping young people realize their possibilities and
Right,
how much they have, how
right.
many possibilities they have, and helping them recognize that. um, with the Corazon Project, which is something that you work on, I think it started with the books and then evolved into the Corazon Project. What I mean, the kids testimonies in and of that are incredible to hear them speak and talk
Hmm.
and about their own personal experience with it. So it still goes on today, correct? You still.
There's currently a pause on
Mhm.
it, but it was it left on such a popular kind of note, and most of almost like I'm a chef without a restaurant, right? So one of
Mhm.
my bosses, he's one of my mentors, a politician, right? So they have a certain a finite amount of years before they kind of term out. But he was the one that said, "What would you do in this neighborhood?" And I'll
Mhm.
fund it. And of course, I pulled these ideas that I had already created, bills on the shelf. So I said, "Wonderful. Let me pull this idea from the shelf and let me put it into play." And it worked. So I believe in my ideas is just a matter of, funders, willing to, kind of give it some air, some oxygen. And what started as kind of a 6 month pilot became a 4 year kind of endeavor. And what was interesting is that the original goal was creating local heroes, right? Local leaders through the
Mhm.
young people. But what was interesting is that um, as through the curriculum, motivated these young people to dream bigger.
Mhm.
They didn't want to stay in their neighborhood. They wanted to get jobs. They wanted to go off to college. So almost like success was no more kids showing up because they were so busy now. Before it was like 35 of them because they weren't doing anything. They're just kind of hanging out all day. But then they started becoming productive. So it was this kind of eye opening of like, wow, success was after 4 years, all these young people plugged into life, you know?
Wow.
And so that's when we kind of, and then my supervisor, he's a senator now. So he moved on to the state and the funding dried up. So I said, okay, now I know this idea works. So I'll just keep it kind of until the next time somebody wants to resurrect it with some funds, etc. And now I'm more of a like a instructor kind of coach, right?
Mhm.
I'm not in the front lines like I used to because I've been in the field 20 plus years. So
Mhm.
now I'm more of a kind of trainer of trainers, per se,
Right.
versus being the guy, out there making it work.
Right. Right. And so what do you see in, for example, like, do you plan on writing another book?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely. I'm actually working on it because it takes about 6 months of brainstorming.
mhm,
Um, because I think of an idea, I write it down 2 weeks later, a month later, I look at it again and see if it still, feels good. So now I finally got the aha moment, clarity about a week ago. So I'm excited to start writing my
nice.
fourth one. I published 3 books through Floricanto Press. And again, all of them were my own self therapy. They're all meant for me, and they
Mhm.
just happen to be useful to other
Right,
people.
right, right.
But they were dedicated to myself.
It would be an interesting book, I think, eventually, to do one with the young people who went through the Corazon Project,
Right.
to tell their story,
Exactly.
so that they, can then have their opportunity,
Testimony.
yeah,
Yep.
their testimonial, but also share their experience, because I
Right.
imagine from the beginning it wasn't easy. It's not like they
Right.
just jumped into the Cornerstone Project and was like, okay, I'm
Exactly.
it was a
Exactly.
process.
Yeah, and I think I'm like one of those kind of fearless, bold people where for a long time the stereotype was two stereotypes. One is that you have to be an ex gang member to help young gang members, and it's not true. Father Greg Boyle, who's older white man, is one of the has the most effective gang intervention program in the whole world.
Mhm.
He's older white man. So because it's about genuine heart is what people
Yeah,
recognize. If you have a genuine heart, you can do this work. It doesn't matter your criminal background, your race, etc.,
right.
your gender. The second one is that the stereotype or the belief that you can't ask young people to give up their gang colors. Like that's just never going to happen. And I asked, and young people started giving up their gang colors. And through mentoring, but also through gift cards exchange, I would make them deals like, okay, how much would you, give me for your red rag, blue rag, your hat, your etc.
Yeah.
And your pocket knife, whatever. And in the Corazon Project video, you'll just see just the response of just how much was turned in, and it boggled people's mind because nobody had ever asked. So you have to utilize your influence, again, and we have to stop being so polite about it,
Right. I
and
I
just
agree.
use it.
Mhm. No, but I agree with you there, because I feel, even for me, the more disciplined I've been with my students, the more they accepted,
Right.
mm, me as a person and me caring about them.
Right.
And so I have to agree with you on that one. I found it interesting as I was watching the video, the group of students who was talking to the board members and
Right.
security,
Police chiefs. Yep.
and how they, how they were, they were expressing that they didn't feel safe in school, but yet
Mhm.
the people that were listening were not really receptive
Right.
to hearing that.
Right. And that I'm glad you asked that because I think we're still stuck in data driven. I understand it makes sense, but it's very narrow minded in my opinion, because these board members, etc. If it's not reported, they think it doesn't exist. If they
Right.
don't see in a spreadsheet, and some numbers, some percentages, if they
Hmm.
don't see that, they believe it doesn't exist. And these young people are saying fights happen in the bathroom without anybody finding out.
Hmm.
Fights happen behind the building where nobody finds out. Fights happen, a block away from school, etc. So just because it's not reported doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It
Right.
just doesn't exist for you if you're looking for spreadsheets and you're looking for kind of published data that
Right.
becomes 3 years old. You know,
Right.
so same thing with like CPS, right? Child Protective Services. Oftentimes it's there's less reports. Some of that just means possible child abuse happening, and nobody's reporting it.
Right.
So I think I understand data driven, but there's human data, which is
Absolutely.
people's testimonies, and you have to believe them, not just because there isn't, a spreadsheet attached to their back.
Right. And how can you and how do you give data on fear?
Exactly.
I don't feel safe walking down the hall means
Right.
that maybe the person in the locker next to you has a
Exactly.
weapon, or somebody else
Right.
has said something to you.
It's
And
hard to quantify it. Yeah, it's hard to quantify it.
absolutely very difficult to quantify and say that. And I just feel that sometimes young people aren't listened to, uh,
Right.
just because they're young. However,
Right.
if they don't feel safe, how well do you think they're going to actually perform?
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's a whole other thing too. But yeah, I just found that a very interesting piece to the whole thing. And um, so yeah. So in in looking to the future, I know you mentioned you wanted to write, do another book. What do you feel the is something that, if you had any amount of money, if you had any amount of support, if you have anything that you could do, what would it be?
I love that question. Because I'm a dreamer, so I'm
Mm,
always, if I hit the lottery type of dream. So those are some private lists I have, but I'm glad you asked it. Um, I see myself definitely getting these books out to as many students' hands as possible, because I think it does, as teachers would put it, it transforms young people's lives. So I would just hand them out for free. I would just hand them out at classrooms, and really just inspire people to start over, that you can start over in life and press reset. So I would fund kind of an unlimited number of books for young people, because I think it will inspire them, from the inside out.
mhm,
Second, I think I would love to have an actual kind of building, like a retreat type of center, kind of a healing center.
mhm.
Everything from, because I teach self defense, but that's just, because that helped me, right, get some of my emotions out. It's just hitting the bag, or that was.
Right.
But there's so much in terms of the healing arts, right? From yoga to, pets, etc. I mean, there's the writing. So there's so many artistic outlets,
Mhm.
for the healing process. So more of that, and just kind of random blessings. I'm not sure if you're familiar with day workers, but the immigrant workers who just stand out there waiting for work. So I oftentimes drop off food for them, clothes for them, because they're unemployed. They don't have a work permit, and oftentimes they're fathers too, and they're waiting for one day's work. I dropped off some gifts yesterday, and I called the dad and said, "Hey, I dropped off some gifts." He said, "Thank you. I didn't have anything for under the tree." And it's December
Right.
21st. December 21st, 3 kids and nothing under the tree. So I think those random blessings,
Mhm.
um, just because,
Yeah.
just because. So when I used to have a nonprofit, people used to donate, and I used to buy gift cards, and I used to just hand, $100 grocery gift cards to people,
Mhm.
pay people's rent who were just in dire, kind of panic mode. One young girl reported sexual abuse of an uncle, but he was paying half the rent. So, when he went to jail and the whole family's panicking because they're going to go homeless, she said, "I regret telling the truth." And I was like, "No, no, no," and I paid their rent for a couple months. And to say, like, this shouldn't be any type of regret, to report, any type of abuse. So kind of, I miss those days. I miss those days of being able to have kind of these unrestricted funds to just meet the need. As I came across somewhere, or somebody would be like, "Hey, this family is in need," and I would start like kind of like a Christmas adopt a family type
Yeah.
program, and we would just rain blessings on them, before the holidays as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think,
So
I
thank
mean,
you for the question.
and that's probably, the best thing. And I would have to agree with you on many of those counts of being able to help others, and, in the of serving others. I think that that's really important in helping them. Aw. So cute. Yes, and and the more you bless others, the more you're blessed as well. And so I think that's always a good thing. And a lot of times people think too it needs to just be money. However, people can donate their time and their a kind word sometimes too, and help others as well. So what are your plans for this coming holiday?
Um, I'm a foodie, so I love to eat. So I just just that downtime.
Mhm.
I kind of switched over to a different team, a different supervisor, and it's a lot more laid back, kind of atmosphere. So I feel like I can actually, be a less stressed and more present,
Yes.
which is a blessing, to just enjoy life
That's true. Very
and not be so
important.
distracted.
Yes. And that's very important to kind of just come back to center, and have that time to do that. So I'm so happy that we had this time to share together and to get to know you. And I
Thank
am
you.
going to, I said I had ordered the one book, and I am going to get the other ones as well. And I'm looking forward to reading them and sharing them with my students as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I love it to hear any feedback.
I will for sure. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you again.
And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Alrighty, take
Bye
care.
now.
Bye bye.